Hello everyone and welcome back to the GeekWave. This is the low budget show. It's the show so low it has no budget. But this time around, for our 44th or 43rd episode, we have some new technology because I have finally updated to a better computer. And maybe I'll put a picture up on the YouTube version so you can see the screen, but I'll be doing a big video talking about the updates and things I'm looking to do with the channel now that I got more equipment and stuff like that. And we'll see what happens, but new stuff, new year, new stuff to talk about, because I said it when I did my Black Widow review. We're going to be talking about Marvel until we're dead. That's just the fate that any, comic book, movie, television, review, influencer, content creator has signed on for. It's not always great. Sometimes there are a few hiccups here and there, but this is the life that we've chosen. And we talked about Black Widow last week, but this time on the GeekWave, we're going to be talking about Loki. Because I didn't do weekly reviews for Loki, I did weekly reviews for, WandaVision and Falcon and Winter Soldier, but I really just didn't want to talk about Loki. And we'll get into why as we get into the show. But, man, I love Marvel so much, but I just feel like we're going to have so much of it that it's either just going to become redundant and just nothing important happening. And I'm just like, I don't want to be a part of that. But we do have a couple pieces of news we are going to talk about here. We got a few things I'm very excited about. And then we will get into the discussion on Loki. So the first piece of news I wanted to get into, because I like this a lot, is the Val Kilmer documentary, which is coming out in a couple weeks. And I basically just wanted to talk about the trailer for this Val Kilmer doc, because I like Val Kilmer a lot. I think he's a genuinely good dude, and he's very fun. He's very fantastical. He's a great personality, and having him want to tell his story is very exciting to me, just because the guy's been through a lot, to say the least, and I'm curious to see how this is going to come about. I love Val Kilmer, and it was very tragic just to see this man go through so much in such a short time. He's only in his 60s, and the tragedy that struck him where he lost his ability to speak and his cancer in his throat, it's tragic, it is sad, but this doc looks to be like an uplifting message. He's saying his final words about himself and the life he has lived to the people, to his fans, and it excites me. Like, it's honestly, when I saw this trailer, it is one of the first times in a long time where a trailer actually made me go, this is great, this is inspiring, this is something I desperately need to see and talk about, because it's heartening, it's just like, damn, dude, you've lived a life. You've been Batman before Batman was cool. You've been in all these inspirationally fun and uplifting movies. You've literally been one of these guys who's been around for so long, but it's never really become that household name sometimes, and the tragedy that struck you sucks. So this documentary, I will be talking about it when it comes out, and this trailer was one of the few trailers in recent times or ever that actually made me really sad and made me teary-eyed. So I'm just like, okay, I guess we're going to be talking about Val Kilmer a lot more, which I'm never going to complain about because the guy is great. Speaking of things that are not great, okay, I wanted to bring this up because you guys know I just love Zack Snyder. One of my favorite guys of all time, just never made anything bad. Zack Snyder, the perfect filmmaker. He has talked about his next project that he wants to do for Netflix, and it's called Rebel Moon or something. Some stupid title like that. Look, he's butthurt because, Disney doesn't want him to make a Star Wars, so he says, screw it, I'm going to make my own Star Wars for people who think they know what Star Wars should be. This, to me, screams like every person who thinks The Last Jedi or Disney Star Wars is bad is going to flock to this as what Star Wars should be, and it makes me so upset. It actually offends me, because I just hate the idea of somebody saying what Star Wars is supposed to be when it can be literally anything because it's a space movie and it doesn't matter. But look, Zack makes a good-looking movie sometimes, so I will definitely watch it, because this is the life I've chosen for myself, where I'm going to be talking about all of this crap until I'm dead. Rebel Moon, everyone. Stay tuned to see Zack Snyder tackle space. He did zombies, he did superheroes, he did other crap I can't remember. I hate this. I really don't want this. We got another trailer to talk about, which I think is kind of exciting. So the first official, pretty much big look at Marvel's What If has dropped, and the trailer is very exciting. I'm probably excited about it for different reasons than other people. In particular, what excites me about this project is the animation style, because I'm a huge fan of animation, and seeing how we can change the medium of that concept is really cool. There's a very distinctive look to this animation that you don't see in a lot of other places. Saying all that, we'll get into it when we talk about Loki. I couldn't give two shits about the multiverse of whatever Marvel is working on, and having alternate versions of this just doesn't interest me. It bores me. I think it's dumb, and I can't stand the idea that this gets people excited, because I'm like, really? It's just things that you know happening differently. Like the What If book itself is interesting enough because it's not in continuity, but now they're trying to put this in continuity, which I think is going to be the detriment of the series and just not make it work the way people want it to. So I guess we're getting a What If series. It's coming out in August, and will I be doing weekly reviews? I guess we'll see how the first episode goes, but if I had to guess, no, we won't be. And let's go to something that actually excites me a little more, and that is the creators of The Haunting of House on the Haunted Hill House, Hill Haunted House. One of those Netflix shows where, like, you know, Raul Cooley's like in a scary place. Those creators are going to be adapting Something is Killing the Children to live action on Netflix, which I'm like, yes, this makes sense. This is arguably the biggest independent comic book of the past 10 years. It has gone through so many reprints of that first issue. The story is fantastic. Tynion just announced like a spin-off coming of that. This is perfect for that idea, and it's so Netflix because it's like, here's like the cool young girl. You could set it in the 80s or wherever you want to set it. Here's all your like horror stuff. It's straight up just like Stranger Things, but interesting. And I like that concept a lot. My problem is taking this to Netflix is going to run it ragged so much, because when you do these types of adaptations, I think this stands better than things like October Faction and other stuff in that generic, like, here's a bunch of murderous people that like are like old school and stuff. Like, you know the concept I'm talking about. This is a little more interesting in terms of a comic, but Netflix bleeds everything it creates so dry that it just loses its interest. And I just don't want to see that happen to Something is Killing the Children. I believe there could be some standout moments in here just because this comic is just so fun and there's so much to love about it. But it also is very cliched and very obvious at times. And I think if they lean more into like the House of Slaughter stuff, or the Slaughterhouse, which is going to be the spin-off book, it's going to become just another boring thing. But if we do like the slow methodical burn of like a small town building itself up, I think that's a little more interesting than just leaning into like all these like kind of sexy kids who are monster hunters. That being said, I look forward to seeing who they get as Erica. I think that could be a really cool casting choice. Colorblind would be cool too. Get somebody else in there to do something. But as excited I am as for this, I think I'd be more excited if it wasn't Netflix wanting to tackle it. Just because you guys know, every time I talk about stuff, Netflix is the worst streaming service and they have the lowest content rating. Like, their stuff is just worse comparatively to some of the other stuff. And now let's go to something I'm very excited about. The last two pieces of news we're going to talk about are things I'm genuinely just like, give me this right now. First one being, we got official confirmation that Greta Gerwig will be writing, well, not writing, is she writing? I can't remember. She will be directing, at least, the Margot Robbie-led Barbie movie. Now, if you guys don't know, I talk about it a few times, actually. I'm a massive fan of Barbie. I love the character, I love the concept, I love everything that stands for. Barbie is such a fun property, and Greta Gerwig, a great choice for this. She would understand the comedy that movie needs so perfectly. I love this idea so much. You can guarantee we will be talking about Barbie immensely on this channel, just because I love what Barbie stands for and that concept. And Margot Robbie, a great choice for that role too. I see this being a modern Scooby-Doo, where we just play into those tropes so heavily that it becomes really fun and really just enjoyable and different and unique. And you could do a serious take on Barbie too. I mean, Oh my goodness, I got so many ideas for Barbie episodes to talk about. Like I want to talk about like what the lasting impact is on Barbie. I want to talk about like what you could do for a Barbie movie. I'd love to talk about the best styles for Barbie. And I think when it comes down to it, I want this to be a parody movie, and I think this is the team that could make it a parody movie, which is very exciting to see. So look forward to more Barbie talk coming to this channel very soon. And my final piece of news here is something that was kind of talked about a couple weeks ago, and we got official confirmation now because she put it on her TikTok now. You guys know I love Greta Gerwig and I love Margot Robbie, but my love is currently, and my obsession right now, is with the modern Jane Fonda, and that, of course, is Jameela Jamil, a woman I adore immensely and would do anything to be around, just to be on her show I Weigh, or just talk to her about, like, the interesting things that Hollywood does. I just want to be a part of her. I just want to be around her. She's just the best. She is officially confirmed that she will be working on the She-Hulk television series, which, if you wanted me to fall in love with this program even more, you get Jameela, because I love everything about this. The rumor is she's going to be Titania, which, if that's the case, Marvel, this is my open declaration to you that I would love to be Crusher Creel, and I would love to be Absorbing Man if she's going to be Titania. That is just my demand. That is what I love. But this girl is fantastic. She is such a figure of power, and she's just such a positive presence in Hollywood right now, and having her come to She-Hulk just makes me love this program even more. I think She-Hulk might be my most anticipated Marvel show, and you guys know I'm the biggest Moon Knight fan out there, but She-Hulk just it's working for me. It's working for me in ways I didn't think it would, and that to me is one of the most amazing things about this. So, Jameela, I will watch anything you do, and Marvel, if you are looking for a young, plucky guy to play your Absorbing Man, that's kind of not age appropriate, but I do it anyways, I will happily be your Absorbing Man. I'll be the punching bag if it means I get to work with Jameela for, 10 years? I'll do it no matter what. That is all the news this week. A bunch of cool stuff and some bad stuff with Zack Snyder. So when we come back from the break, let's jump into the world of the TVA and talk about the Time Variance Authority and how much I think Loki is a letdown. So, just like what I did of Black Widow, I decided I don't want to do a standard review when it comes to Loki, because I understand the audience that watches this stuff, and it's come to my attention that it's more or less just like, let's have a discussion, say your thoughts and feelings, and get out. Don't expect people to actually want to hear what you have to say, and they'd rather have their opinion validated. I don't mean that as a criticism. I'm just saying that is where the critiques have become. That's what they just are now, and it sucks sometimes, but I get it. People are really into this stuff, so I'm not going to say anything negative about it. I will say, though, when we get into this style, what I did with Black Widow, I'm going to be doing for things that are related to Marvel. I'm going to be doing them for DC and Star Wars. I think this will be the big three I do it for, but it could change. I could do this format for other stuff depending on it. The format we're going to be sticking to is I'm going to give you a list of 10 things I liked about the show and 10 things I didn't like, because this is not my type of Marvel program. And now I'm going to get into it when we get more into the stuff I didn't like, but what this is trying to like set forward in terms of the entire Marvel universe is literally the stuff I don't want to see for Marvel. And I think just coming into this Loki show, it's been 10 years since Tom Hiddleston made his first appearance as Loki. He's probably earned the right to make his own, film, and the fact that it's become a television show is good for the character, because it's like, now we can explore more interesting opportunities. And I think that the opportunities it took were pretty weird and pretty boring. Now, I don't think there's anything about this show that screams originality. This is a very expensive episode of Doctor Who, and already I can tell you right now, I'm not the biggest fan of Doctor Who. I've seen very limited of it, and what I have seen has never kept my interest long enough to think it's great. But I am also a fan of that classic science fiction feel, which is something I kind of hope this delved more into, as opposed to like the over-dramatic time and space elements. But we are going to get into it, and it's going to be a fun discussion, because I am certain people are going to have their opinions on what I have to say. First off, we actually have a bit of news regarding this show to get into, and we'll start with that because the show, spoiler alert if you haven't seen the final episode, it is renewed for a second season, which will come back to the stuff I'm negative about when it comes to this show, because I'm like, this is so clearly set up to be a two-parter. Like, it didn't feel like a cohesive story, and we'll get into that more later, but I'm just like, yeah, of course it's a season 2. This isn't how you would end a show. This isn't how a finale would behave, and it's just so weak in that regard, and I don't like that aspect of things, but we'll get into it, because it could be something else to explore further down the line, but whatever. So, second season, that's great. The showrunner and director, Kate Herron, will not be returning for the second season, which I'm like, that leads me to believe, because I initially thought it was going to be, they already filmed the second season, and they did like back-to-back kind of thing, and they didn't tell anybody, but I guess that means they didn't film it, so it's probably not going to come for a few years, which leads me to believe, okay, she must have gotten a really good offer somewhere else to do something extraordinary. Now, I don't know what that was, but if I had to guess, and I don't know if we have a confirmation on who's actually working on this show, if I had to guess, I think Kate Herron will be working on Ahsoka. That seems like the next logical leap for her if she stayed at Disney. I don't know if Dave Filoni is like fully running the Ahsoka show, but if he's not and they needed like a day-to-day director to do all that stuff, I wouldn't be surprised if it was Kate Herron and we get that announcement in a year or so. So she's not coming back for season 2. Curious to see who they're going to get. I wouldn't be surprised if we just committed to the bit and got somebody who rebooted Doctor Who to come on and work on this show. Wouldn't be surprised. Or if we got some of the Rick and Morty guys to come on and do this, which I know they were already talking about, and I think some of them have already worked on this show, or they're writing Ant-Man and the Wasp, Quantumania, but I guess we'll see what happens. I'm just still not that excited for any of this. I'm more curious to see, what did Kate Herron get that took her away from Loki? Because that seems like something you'd want to stay on, but I guess she got something pretty good if it took her off the show. I think it's Ahsoka. We'll have to wait and see. So, let's get into Loki discussion. If you're watching this, you've probably seen all 6 episodes, so you're just waiting to hear what I think is good and what I think is bad. Let's start with the good, because I'm a positive person, if you can't tell. You know, if you guys have listened to my Black Widow review, I kind of had a breakdown at the end where I just realized this is going to be our lives pretty much for the end of time, where we're just going to be every week, every day, there's going to be just a new news topic to talk about from a comic book being adapted into live action or animation, and it's going to probably be the detriment of all happiness in the universe, where we're just going to be like, yay, we're losing our minds. It's just collectively like, okay, because honestly, we just had Black Widow, it's Loki, we're not getting a break until What If, and then it's into Shang-Chi, and then it's just like, it's either Miss Marvel or Hawkeye, leading into Eternals, leading into Spider-Man. It's literally every day of our lives, this shit is happening. Do you know why comic books only come out on Wednesday? Because you need the other 6 days just to breathe. And it feels like comic book movies are not going to let you breathe anytime soon, which sucks. But the good about Loki. Let's stop talking about the negatives of all this stuff that we worked so hard to get. Let's talk about the good of Loki, this show I didn't like. Number 1 for me, the color palette. That was very impressive. I always criticize the MCU because I don't think they use colors to their full advantage. And I'm not talking about like the oversaturated colors of somebody like Snyder or Michael Bay. I just mean like you're playing with all these beautiful concepts. And it only took them, I think, until Guardians of the Galaxy to really find that mold and use those colors. But the colors in this show are so vibrant. They are so sharp. Probably better than anything we've seen before, because it's matted enough and muted enough where you're just seeing like, here's the dullness, but when we get to like the extravagant greens and yellows and pinks and purples, it is so sharp and crisp that it makes it look really good, and it just stands out so beautifully as compared to other shows where it just kind of like fills in the blank, and because this becomes something less than beautiful. I just really like the way colors were presented in this show. It just added to that. And the Lamentis episode in particular, I think, had some beautiful use of the color purple, just as like the lighting, the scenes and everything. That was a really good use of that color and that abstract. And as the episodes went on after that, it was just even more beautiful and worked perfectly for everything that was. So that's like one of the highlights for me. One of the first things I noticed watching the show. I may not have liked everything they did, but I liked the way it looked. And that leads into my number 2, which is the cinematography, because I think it's rare for a Marvel movie or a Marvel series to give you such a good sense of like scope and range and feeling, where it's just like there is a vastness to everything happening in this show. You feel everything happening is so extraordinary and extravagant and just larger than life, and there's such a great defining stuff where you just see like the scale where it's like the small Loki and Sylvie just walking through the streets and all this big over the top set pieces. That looks really cool and just added some like really nice flavor to the show, where I'm like, this is just extravagant, which is what it was trying to go for. And I commend that a lot for sticking true to that feeling, because it just added so much more to this show, just having it be like, yeah, we're doing it, we're making it look good, we're having the big set pieces, like just the backgrounds and the colors and all the way the cinematography blended into that was absolutely phenomenal. It just looked so powerful and good. Probably one of the best looking shows and one of the best uses of CG in all of Marvel. They just knew where to put the money, where to put the big extravagant stuff. I absolutely adored how that looked. I think it was fantastic. So, number 3 for me is Sophia Martino. Is that her name? Sophia Di Martino. Just the way she was able to convey so much emotion with her facial expressions. This is something I want to talk about when we get to the negative, but I'm going to talk about it in the positive here first. A character like Loki has always been drawn and portrayed as the chameleon-like face, where it's just like the rubber face Jim Carrey style that can like blend into everything, the over-the-top smiles, the crinkles all along the faces, the eyebrows. And I don't think Tom Hiddleston portrays that as good as Sophia Di Martino does, because just every time she just like looked angry or happy, or she just twitched her face slightly, it was extra believable as compared to some of the more contemporary actors in this piece. She was a standout for me. I think she was a really good introduction to this world and had a really interesting story that kind of petered out to go nowhere, but just the way she was able to convey the emotion she was feeling, I think better than anybody else in the cast, made her a standout to me. Like, you could just take any still of her. It was kind of just like how I felt seeing Elizabeth Olsen in WandaVision, where it's like you're letting this woman completely commit to the bit to the point where you believe every cue she is doing. Just the way she just crinkles her face at certain moments, the way the small twitch in her eye when she does something, the grin that comes up when she's feeling, you know, a little bit saucy. I absolutely adored the way she handled that stuff, and it made it look that much better compared to some of the more stiff performers in this show. And you know what? There are some stiff performers in this show, and we will get to them. Don't you worry. I love Sophia in this. This is one of those times where I'm like, okay, I have a vague idea of who this actress is, but I want to learn more about her. I'd like to see more stuff. I hope this opens up the larger Hollywood industry to her and she can take more opportunities in here, because she seems like a really cool actress and somebody who is really fun to see portray characters. I like it a lot. And that leads into my number 4. And that, of course, is Richard E. Grant, because, hey, man, sometimes you just need somebody who's an adult to come in and tell you how to get things done. I love the idea of the character he played, and that kind of leads into like my number 5. And I just think like Richard E. Grant is such a good actor who should be revered on that level of guys like Ian McKellen and Patrick Stewart, just the way he's able to subtly come in there, give the best performance of the episode, and then just leave on top of everything. That is his level of commitment to stuff like this. He pulls it off because he believes in it. He just goes for it, even if it's silly and dumb. And it works. He worked so well for being in one episode of this show. And that goes into my number 5, and that is just the final moments of classic Loki, which is his character, just like using all of that strength to reconstruct Asgard, just fully committing to like the outlandish costume with the big stupid horns that look fake and rubbery, the stupid spandex, just committing to that look, being that guy, and then suddenly having the most powerful power in all of the Marvel universe, just constructing an entire city using this illusion so powerfully that you convince the, what is it called, Shume Gorath or whatever it is, the obelisk, the void creature, to just come after you so Sylvie and Loki can escape. That was a badass moment. It was probably the best looking moment of the entire show. Some people might disagree with that, but I'm telling you now, when you commit to the silly, it works really well. Don't stray away from it, especially with a character like Loki. who just really needs to have that certain energy presented to him. I really loved the way Richard E. Grant just committed to what this was, and they made this stupid dopey costume look really good in live action. That's amazing. That is literally just dedication and caring about the character you are portraying. And my number 6 for things I like. Of course, I gotta bring this up because this is really important to me, and I want to get into it for a little bit here. The talking. This is a very talking-heavy show. It's not really hardcore into the action, which some people might not like because the majority of the MCU fans are here to see the action and the fun. But I'm like, if you want to do a Loki show, Loki is a character who uses his words to get out of situations. You have to focus on that. And plus, what is the second biggest component of a comic book aside from the artwork? It's the words. So they are symbiotic in their development. If you're doing a comic book show, the words are equally as important as the pictures. And the pictures are one thing, the words are another thing altogether, but you need both of them to make it work. And the way we did an entire final episode of this show that was just dedicated to talking, that is unbelievable. That is rare in a program like this, and that just stuck with me as something I really enjoyed. I'm just like, I would have more of this. I don't need to see action in my superhero stuff. Most of the comic books I tend to lean towards when it comes to my reading is the stuff that's not action heavy. It's the stuff that looks good and has great writing. So the fact that we had some really fantastic writing in here really sold me on this premise. I thought that was fantastic. My number 7, this was really important to me and something we kind of lost a little bit in the MCU. It understands what Loki is supposed to be. He is the sad clown. He is the punching bag. He is the guy who is there so Thor can be built up to be the hero. Loki is always supposed to be perpetually on his own, just being the loner who gets pushed down by everything in the mythology, in the world, who could never catch the break. They play with that idea so much that this Loki is trying to escape that idea, but he can't really. And I think that is such a great and strong idea of what the character needs to be, that it actually made me happy. Because I'm like, you got it. This is the character. This is who he is. He's the sad clown. Let him be this guy who can never catch a break. He's always being undermined by the things around him. That is the character. That is what he's supposed to be. And I think we kind of lost that after Thor 1, where he just kind of became like the cool sidekick to Thor, where he wasn't really that character anymore that I think really works for him. And that's something I want to see. Loki should stay the villain. I know people are like, he's always been the anti-hero. He has only in Thor stories, but when he's out on his own, he should be the guy who is doing everything to be on top. He's not the guy you should like. You know, I think one of the things Marvel does well is make their villains very heroic in certain areas, but Loki should always be the one that even people like Doctor Doom are like, this guy's an idiot. He can never get it right. Why do we trust him? Why should he do anything? And the show played with that enough where I was satisfied, but sometimes didn't go in depth as I'd like to. But they still did it in a sense, and that makes me happy. Loki is the sad clown. He's a loser. He sucks. He should always be portrayed that way. I understand why you don't, because we got a sexy man like Tom Hiddleston who wants to, be known and not be the punching bag, but I get it. It's fine. My number 8, of course, is the introduction of Jonathan Majors to the MCU. Now, I could probably spend a lot of time thinking about what I believe He Who Remains is and how that works for everything, but it was just nice to see him. I just was like, there's my guy. I love Jonathan Majors, and I'm just glad he's here, because I'm just like, this is a guy I enjoy seeing. He did his best in this episode. I'm not going to say it was the best performance, but I think you've done enough to make me go, this is different than Thanos. If you're going to be the next big bad, which I don't really know if I want Kang to be the next big bad, but if you are, you did enough to make me go, cool. You did good, kid. It worked. Like, it wasn't anything special. It just worked. My number 9 was just a throwaway moment in episode 1, but I think it really stuck with me because I love it, and that is just that the Infinity Stones are useless now, because I'm just like, yeah, man, I don't care. I still think the concept of the Infinity Stones is stupid, it's silly, and I just don't like what they represent and how, like, they just acted in the MCU. And I think now that we're moving away from them being like the ultimate weapons, and now we're focusing on time travel being the weirdest thing ever, just make them useless. It doesn't matter. Casey's got a drawer of them. It literally adds nothing or takes nothing away from the story. They're just things that exist, and we can accept that or not. I don't care. I don't care. It's just Infinity Stones. They're things, man. They're okay. It means nothing to me. I have a lot of criticisms of the MCU and in comic books in general, and I just think the Infinity Stones, they were just something I never could get behind. I'm just like, yeah, I get it. This isn't really what I wanted from my Marvel comics, but whatever. It doesn't matter. And my number 10 for stuff I liked is just the score, because I think it's not like super memorable, but it just satisfied. It just hit every beat right. It got the tone perfectly. It got the feel down perfectly. And that's something that I think I just don't notice a lot. But when I can notice it in a show like this, it adds another layer to everything going on. And the score just had that extra oomph that I think this kind of project needed. It felt very old school science fiction-y. It felt very otherworldly, which added to the whole idea of what this show was. I really, really like that. It was really cool. It actually made me really happy. Just the score. The score is something I think Marvel has just gotten really lazy with. And I just think this one just nailed it and did something special. So those are the 10 things I liked. And they're all very different. You know, people have their opinions on what they like and what they don't like about this show. Those are mine. Let's get into the 10 things I don't like about this show. And before that, I do want to bring up a little point. I just want to throw it out there just so people know I covered it. We do get confirmation that Loki is bisexual. Like, this is like the first big Marvel hero who's officially confirming they are not, hetero. But the character literally just kisses the only girl in the show. And I'm like, really? We've literally introduced the idea of multiple Lokis, and he just happens to kiss the one version of himself that's a woman, and that's the one he's attracted to. I feel like that is the biggest missed opportunity of the show, is that we announce he's bisexual, but the only person we see him attracted to is the pretty girl. That's weak to me. That is really weak to me, and I think that's a waste. So let's get into it. Let's do this. Okay, the things I didn't like about Loki. Number 1, Tom Hiddleston. He looks tired. I feel like all of these old school cats are tired. And that might just be me. Scarlett looked tired. Tony, what's his name? Robert Downey looked tired. Chris Evans looked tired. Hiddleston is looking tired. And I know he's super excited to continue this character, but man, you don't have that spry energy you did as a young man anymore. And this isn't what I want to see. I don't care that much about your character to begin with. Loki was never a character I liked because they turned him into something I thought was too forced to be annoying. But what they did here, making him this hero, it's understandable why people like him. And then I think Tom Hiddleston is still an okay actor. He's probably a better actor on television than he is in a movie. So it works that he's here. He just looked really stiff half the time, where he just wasn't doing much of like his facial expressions. And you compare that to Sophia, and she was out here like literally delivering the Lord's work in terms of like the way she moves her face. And this guy's just doing nothing. And it's noticeable and it's annoying. So I didn't like that. The second thing I didn't like, this kind of ties into what I enjoyed when it came to the talking and how everything's talking. Half the talking was exposition, because don't forget, this is opening the door to the multiverse, and the audience that is going to watch this show, half of them don't understand what that concept means. Because we have to, this isn't a negative, I just want to say we have to explain these things to our audience before we can actually do the things. And if you look at it, this whole season, these whole 6 episodes could just be like, here we go. Here's what's happening in the MCU. Here's multiple versions of Loki. We're gonna see that in Spider-Man. Here's like the multiverse. We're seeing that in Doctor Strange. It's just, here's what you're gonna be getting a sample of before you get the main course. And I think that sucks. And the exposition is just there so you are able to understand it. It's so annoying. I really didn't like that. And that blends into my number 3. Which is something I've done a whole GeekWave episode on, and that is the Marvel Multiverse. I hate the Marvel Multiverse because I don't think they ever did it justice, and I think, especially when it comes to film and live action, it doesn't feel sincere, and it always feels like a cash grab. Now, I think what they did well when it came to Loki was a bunch of new characters, but we're going to be seeing how many Spider-Men showing up, presumably. I don't like that idea. And the fact that Loki made that idea possible upsets me. The Marvel Multiverse has never been a compelling idea. It worked in Secret Wars. Everything else has been kind of basic, honestly. And I'm not excited to see where that goes. I don't like that this show tried to force that down my throat. I'm not excited for the future of the MCU for most of it. Like, there are select things I'm excited for. Shang-Chi and Eternals, I'm very excited for. Moon Knight and She-Hulk and, Miss Marvel, I'm excited for those things. I couldn't give a rat's ass about anything involving the multiverse or multiple characters or that bullshit. I don't care. I just want my simplified storytelling because that is where Marvel shines. I don't need the over-the-top stuff because that is where DC shines, when they do a little bit more than their competitor. So my number 4 is Owen Wilson's character of Mobius. People love him. He's the same character Owen Wilson plays in everything. So I don't know why people are like singing his praises. It's like he literally is the same schmarmy, sarcastic character that Owen Wilson has played in every single movie. It's cool to see him because Owen Wilson's a fun guy to see on screen because you believe every word he says. But it's not enough to make me think he's a standout character because it's the character he's played in every one of his movies. And I'm just like, you got Owen Wilson to do that, of course, but I think he could have done so much more if you just let him off the leash a little bit and had him just like have a little more fun, chew a little more scenery, but no, you just kept him like, do the thing you do. It's like when you got Luke Wilson on Stargirl. I'm like, yeah, this is perfect for him. But he's also, I think, allowed to do a little bit more on Stargirl than Owen did here on Loki. The Wilson brothers, they are both in superhero projects. That's all I'm going to say. My number 5 is the aesthetic of the TVA. I got tired of it really quick. I know people are like, this is cool, but look, Umbrella Academy, Doom Patrol, we've had multiple programs, Doctor Who even, where this aesthetic, like the old school technology thing, has been done before, so it's not breaking any new grounds in that terms. And after a while, I just think this doesn't fit in with everything else that Marvel has used, because if this is supposed to be in the Marvel universe, the Marvel aesthetic is not this vintage stylized thing. It's not like that. It's not that. It's colorful, it's boastful, it's differently made, it's modern, it's futuristic, which I think they should have leaned into. One of my favorite parts of the show actually is when we just see like the outside of the TVA, which is like that beautiful science fiction looking painting with all like the statues of the timekeepers and the ships and everything rolling around, and I'm like, that looks great. But then we go inside, everything's like brown and gold and it's just matted and just boring, and we got stupid like Game Boys, and you could have done so much more for the aesthetic, but I understand your need to make it that vintage looking thing because people like vintage. I just think it was kind of weak. That's just me. I obviously don't like the show as much as other people. My number 6, this is half a story. You didn't tell the full story because the end hero is just like your mid-season finale until we do the second season, which sucks because the first 2 shows we've seen on Disney Plus had a conclusion. This didn't have a conclusion. This was just, here we go. We're just ramping up. This wasn't a real show. It's just set up. The show is just set up, and I hate when a show does that instead of trying to do something original or creative. It's just really weak. And that leads into my number 7, because my last ones just kind of blend into one thing. Pretty much it's just like, if you are not invested in what this part of the MCU is doing, this is an incredibly hard show to watch. And I'm somebody who knew what was coming, so I didn't have the emotional investment. I just don't care about this side of the MCU. So just having all these moments of a character I don't like in a world I'm not interested in with an aesthetic I don't find that appealing really affected my viewing. Because I'm just like, I don't care. I know what's going to happen. It's the multiverse. It's the time travel shit. There's no stakes in this crap. It's literally just breaking shit open to do absolutely nothing, and I don't enjoy that aspect. I'm really down on this show. I don't like it. I don't like what Loki was, and I'm not excited for the second season. So my number 8, another contention I know a lot of people are going to have what I have to say. Every reference, I don't like references, because to me a reference is just, here you go. Here's that thing we're not going to do, so you have it here so it feels like we're better. I don't like it. I understand the need for a reference here and there, but putting the Thanos copter in there doesn't make me think you're clever or smart or that you're like making a better show. It just makes me go, oh yeah, that's something in there. And again, I'm more down on the MCU than a lot of people just because I know what comics can do. I know that just sticking to the bare minimum is boring and it's easy, and then you just throw these references like here's Throg, here's the Thanos copter, here's the Dark Aster and the Living Tribunal and all this crap, and people like it. People eat that shit up. But that's not telling me it's a better story. It's not making me invested in your story. It's just telling me we know what you want, but we're not going to give it to you. We're just going to let you look at it for a minute, and suddenly it's going to be relevant. So Easter egg videos that people do, I think they're just boring. And just throwing stuff in there. I don't need to have to pause the movie to get the idea of something that's going on. Just tell me it in the story, please. Quit trying to force me down. Just stop. Loki is a very complicated show. I don't like it. And I think the positive stuff I talked about, or just it looks gorgeous, the acting is all right, and the characters are cool, there's some great moments, but it's just bogged down by exposition and boring aesthetic and all this basic shit that it just goes nowhere and does nothing, and it sucks. It's not a good show. It's probably closer to the lower half of stuff I don't like in Marvel. I put it in my bottom 5 things of Marvel, and that sucks. So my number 9 for things I don't like is the self-cessed idea where the Lokis fall in love with each other. It's so obvious. And I understand you want to give Loki the love interest. I think you could use a million better characters than just a version of himself, and even the version of himself being a girl. It's so obvious. What if he fell in love with the Vote Loki version of himself? That to me would at least be a cooler concept than him just being in love with the one version of himself that he can put his dick in. It's just so easy. And why does he like her? Because she's got a smart plan? Because she's the only capable Loki? There's no reason for them to like each other. The kiss was disturbing. It didn't add to the story, and they should have just betrayed each other. They should have just remained betrayed. I hope they don't get back together in the second season, because it's weird and it's dumb and it's pointless. And my number 10 reason I am not a fan of the Loki show, and I think it was bad. There's so much set up to bullshit I don't want to watch. I don't want to see Spider-Man or Doctor Strange, because I just want a solid one of those movies first, just pushing all this crap doesn't make it better. It's just annoying and easy and just so unfulfilling. And just here's the multiverse. Here's not a real show. It's just a backdrop to tell you, here's the TVA. Here's the timeline. Here's all the stuff we can break off. Here's where What If will go. And it's not a real show. The thing with Loki is it's not a real show. It's just filler set up to get you to understand what we're doing in other properties and projects. That sucks, man. That is easy and laid back. And it's here's a bunch of Lokis. Now when you see a bunch of Spider-Man, it'll be okay. It's so easy and so saddening. And as this being the flagship Loki show, it just did a lot of stupid stuff and didn't do anything that creative. I know people are this show's brilliant. No, it's just Doctor Who. It's just taking ideas you see in Rick and Morty and making them a little more Shakespearean. It's not that creative. And the acting is very minimal. And the characterizations are very minimal. But when it does try to give you the sad clown Loki, it's good. When it does stay true to like these big scales and the scope being so beautiful and the colors. It is good. When Sophia DiMartino is in here, it is good. But then when she's kissing Tom Hiddleston or building up that relationship, when the TVA is just explaining the timeline and the multiverse and the Nexus event and all these variants, it gets bogged down by all the crap that doesn't make Marvel cool in the first place, and it doesn't feel organic or fun. It just feels like, what do we do after Thanos destroys half the population? Oh, that's right. Just break everything. Like, how are you going to tell me Moon Knight is important when we just cracked open the multiverse? It just doesn't add anything. It's just a new way to get Hugh Jackman to cameo. It's just a way we can get Ryan Reynolds to show up later. It's not a real story. This wasn't a real finale, and Loki is far from a good show. It's really weak, so I'm going to give it a 3 out of 10. It's not that good, and I hope you people understand that just because the MCU puts color and spectacle into things doesn't mean it's going to work every time. And I want you to really think about this. Do we want a new Marvel property every week? Because that's a lot. And then we have DC, and then we have like Harry Potter probably, and a Game of Thrones thing, and Star Wars, and a new Star Trek, and a James Bond probably. And it's just this stuff every day of our lives. There's too much content. And I think opening up a multiverse just adds to the fact that this content is going to be very subpar and doesn't need to exist, because now that we have the rules to the multiverse, because Kevin Feige had his big meeting, there's going to be no consequence to the story. There's not going to be any stakes, because we'll just defeat Kang and either let the timelines be free and everything will stop mattering again, or we'll fix it and stuff isn't going to matter still. I love Kang. I love Kang the Conqueror. He's a fantastic character, but I just can't get excited to see what this show's going to become, because there's so much about this that I'm not excited for. And I said it before when I did my multiverse GeekWave, like the DC is just like, yeah, who cares? It all happened. We're not going to make sense of it. We try to make sense of it, and then we screw it up again. So now we're just going to let it ride. But Marvel can't do that. Marvel has to give you closure to every little thing, because we know why Black Widow is wearing that vest in Infinity War now, because that was such a high contention for a lot of people. Like, who, why, what? I'm just like, okay, Loki, you filled 6 weeks of our lives of content that people will eat up and call cool because there's a crocodile in a helmet. But actuality, you gave us so much exposition that you didn't explain anything, and you set up a world that you're not going to be a part of, because who cares, Loki? You're not a special show. You're just boring. So thank you guys for watching this episode of the GeekWave. Maybe next week we won't be so negative on the world, but what can I say? I'm just miserable all the time. For a guy who says he's very positive, I hate a lot of stuff. So, like I said, if you like the video, please like and subscribe to the channel. If you're listening to this on the podcast feed, please give us a rating over there. It helps out. As always, you can check me out on Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter, and I will catch you guys in the next one. Have fun. Stay safe. Good luck.